President Biden pitched his bipartisan infrastructure deal in Wisconsin Tuesday. After touring the Crosse municipal transit utility, he delivered a speech on the $1.2 trillion proposal. The president promised funding for roads, bridges, and broadband, and would benefit the country for years to come.
This is a generational investment to modernize our infrastructure, creating millions of good-paying jobs. And that's not coming from me, that's coming from Wall Street. Millions of good-paying jobs, and positions America to compete with the rest of the world in the 21st century. Because China is way outworking us in terms of infrastructure.
For more on what's happening over on Capitol Hill, let's bring in Ayesha Rascoe and Marianna Sotomayor. Ayesha is NPR's White House correspondent. Marianna is a congressional reporter at The Washington Post. Welcome to you both. Ayesha, let me start with you. The president made this trip to Wisconsin while an infrastructure deal is far from certain. Is he doing this to cement it, or could this tour backfire?
I think what he's trying to do is trying to build momentum for a deal. Right now, the administration is sort of walking this tightrope where they're trying to do this two-pronged approach where they will have hard infrastructure in a bipartisan deal, which they've worked out a framework, but then they also want to try to get all of these other priorities like the child tax credit and all these other things that they want on their agenda, get that done through reconciliation. And so what they're trying to do, and I had said at one point today that it was kind of like Jenga, like they're trying to like move the pieces around without upsetting the other part of the tower and having the whole thing collapse, because you have people on the left who are upset, who want to make sure that their priorities are going to be addressed, whether it's climate change or issues like that. And they're saying they will not support an infrastructure bill alone. And then you have conservatives and you have Republicans who signed on to this bill or to this framework who say, we don't want to be a part of this more progressive package, and we don't want the infrastructure package linked to that. So what you have is this very narrow lane that the administration is trying to walk through, and they're trying to build support from the public about it.
I like that image of Jenga. It is definitely a balancing act for sure. And so, Marianna, just to dive in a little deeper into what Ayesha was saying, over the weekend, the White House walked back the president's comments, which seemed to link this infrastructure deal to a separate Democrats-only bill containing more progressive wish list items, for instance, towards climate change. Are progressives now still confident that the White House is committed to their priorities?
Well, when it comes to progressives, they're definitely making sure that Pelosi keeps her word. You remember she was the first one, along with Senate Majority Leader Schumer, to say that they were going to pass these two bills in tandem. You also heard, as you mentioned, Biden by the end of last week saying that he was going to do that as well. He was going to support that. However, you did quickly hear from moderates that they were not necessarily supportive of the fact that this one bipartisan bill, as numerous moderate Democrats have told me, are going to help not just Democrats, but Republicans. Why hold that bill back if it can benefit a number of people if you're going to wait for this progressive package? So it's worth pointing out progressives are a little bit more hesitant of the fact that Biden had to play cleanup on aisle one with this. However, they are very much still looking at the speaker and also the majority leader of the Senate and going to pressure them and hold them accountable to the fact that they are trying to pass these two bills. But, you know, Ayesha mentioned this as well. The margins in both the House and the Senate are extremely tight. So when it comes to passing this bipartisan bill potentially in the House, Democrats can only lose 4 votes. However, there are a number of Republicans who are supporting this bipartisan bill. They could make up for potential progressive defections, but that is still a couple months away for us to see, given that really the House wants to make sure that the Senate passes both the bipartisan bill as well as the reconciliation bill first.
And Marianna, is it clear whether or not Mitch McConnell is interested in making this deal? Because, a recent poll showed that a slim majority of Republican voters do support this compromise infrastructure bill. And of course, it would be great for Republicans as well as Democrats to go back to their constituents and say, hey, look, I got all this money, for our area. So, I think what is sometimes forgotten in this whole argument is that this can be a win-win for both sides.
That's correct. And many Republicans, at least before this deal was struck, were very much listening to their counterparts. And you also got that signal from McConnell. He wasn't saying outright, we're not supporting this. He would say outright, if any of these proposals, include provisions that would increase taxes, Republicans are going to be out. But given that that wasn't necessarily part of the conversation with this deal, he has been pretty measured. However, when Pelosi and Schumer and then Biden came forth saying that these bills will have to go in tandem, he was vocal about that. He did say and warned that a number of Republicans likely wouldn't support this bipartisan bill if they knew that this reconciliation bill was coming shortly thereafter. And even though Biden did say that that is no longer his point of view or the White House's point of view, McConnell is still expressing doubt and saying, well, that's great that Biden clarified, but that doesn't make me feel any better that Democratic leaders aren't going to still try and push both the reconciliation and the bipartisan bill at the same time.
Right. And Ayesha, President Biden and the First Lady head to Florida on Thursday. What's on their agenda once they get there?
Well, the details are still coming out about the trip, but we do know that President Biden is really someone who, one of the things about him as a leader is that he's known for his empathy, and he's known for being able to deal and to comfort people who have gone through unspeakable tragedy, which this is a tragedy. And he's able to do that because he has been through so much tragedy himself and has had so much loss himself. And so he really can play that role of consoler in chief. That is really one of his strengths. That is something that he was able to do on the campaign trail when it came to the coronavirus and the losses that the U.S. has faced from that. And that will certainly be on display on Thursday. And even though this is not infrastructure necessarily, this is a different issue, it still is this idea that you have the U.S. kind of falling apart in some sense when it comes to bridges, when it comes to all of these different things, these structures. And so I don't think that he'll try to make a political play that day because of the nature of this. But I think that this does kind of play into that idea that something needs to be done, that the U.S. needs to be built back up.
Right, before more tragedies happen. Good point. And Marianna, Speaker Pelosi surprised some with the announcement of another potential pick to join a select committee investigating the Capitol riot that could include a Republican. How likely is that to happen, and who might it be?
Well, that is something that we are all trying to figure out. Who exactly would this Republican be if she even decides to go that route? And it's interesting that she's even dangling this as an option, more or less telling Republicans, okay, if you don't want to participate in this select committee, well, then I will at least do my part and put a Republican there. And also signaling that whoever they pick, it would likely be someone who didn't vote against certifying the election, also someone who hasn't necessarily been walking back what happened on January 6th. We've seen a number of very conservative Republicans more or less rewriting history in some ways about what happened earlier this year when those insurrectionists stormed the Capitol. But we don't exactly know any names right now. Of course, many people are floating Congresswoman Liz Cheney as well as Congressman Adam Kinzinger, people who voted to impeach the president and have been very vocal and critical against Trump and what he is espousing post his election loss. So they also have been asked, and they haven't really ruled it out. They said, you know what, if the speaker were to ask me, we'll see what happens if and when the speaker asks me to do such a thing. another thing we're trying to really nail down is when she would even make those announcements, even when it comes to Democrats. Who are they, and how soon will we know when this select committee will actually really begin to do its work? Of course, the House is out for another week, starting at the end of this week, so hopefully we'll get a couple of answers sooner rather than later.
Right, for July 4th recess. So, Ayesha, the Biden administration is on track to further roll back some Trump-era immigration policies. What is involved with their plan to give expelled migrants a chance at returning to the U.S.?
Well, the Biden administration has tried to take a different tact than the Trump administration, which obviously faced a lot of controversy because of the way that it handled immigration. And so you have the Biden administration at this point trying to take a different approach. They have gotten some criticism because of the border, but I think at this point they are trying to make process differences so that people are able to come over in an orderly fashion, or at least to try to come over, and that they to look at where their priorities are when it comes to deportations, which is something that the Trump administration did not do. They were willing to not necessarily just prioritize people who had committed crimes and things of that nature. And so you see some of this rolling back of really where the president has the most power, which is over immigration policy, where they don't have to wait for Congress necessarily. They can take action. And we saw that during the Trump administration, and we're seeing that now during the Biden administration.
Ayesha Rascoe and Marianna Sotomayor, thanks to both of you for joining us. We appreciate it.